All right. Hello, everyone. This is CJ, and welcome to Rogue 420. And I'm very excited today to be delivering the very first inaugural of the podcast, Cannabis Culture. And our podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine. And I have with me today the editor, the creator extraordinaire, and the very talented Laura. And Laura Madison is going to walk us through and introduce our guest today. So, Laura, go for it.
Hi, guys. Hello.
Hello.
I have Amy Brown here. She is going to be sharing her experience this last week with us, her patient experience. And then we have John Frazier. And John, if you want to introduce where you're calling from so you can bring some attention to that, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I'm calling from a super secret location, Mary Jane's dispensary in Moore, Oklahoma.
Awesome.
I'm talking with Mary Jane Media here.
Hi.
Hello, how are you? DC with Mary Jane Media.
Woo! Nice to meet you. So, why don't you start?
Yeah, you introduced Amy already, right?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was making sure all the audio streams were going fine. Just in case, hey Amy, just so the listeners they understand that we're doing this live. There's no script here. It's raw. It's real. So that's the way I like to do the podcast. But I want to thank everyone for listening in. And just full disclosure here before we jump into some of our conversation is that we're going to be talking today and sharing some success stories of individuals utilizing medical cannabis as an alternative health solution. However, just in full disclosure, just make sure that whichever state you're listening in from, because we have an international audience as well as here in the U.S. So make sure you review your laws, make sure before you start cannabis, and then more importantly, just make sure you consult with your doctor before beginning any type of regimen with that. So let's jump into it. I'm very excited about this conversation because I firsthand have more or less been seeing the trend that's occurring right now with many people finding solutions to health-related issues utilizing medical cannabis, where traditionally for too long that traditional medicine has really kind of not provided us a solution. So I'm excited to jump into this. So Laura, where would you like to start?
Well, I'd like to start with John and Amy, just allowing them to kind of explain what happened this last week in Alva when they had the protest there.
Well,
Okay.
Last week was real heavy, wasn't it, Amy?
It was nice. It turned out to be a really nice event. Yeah, there was probably, I would say maybe 60 to 70 people in there. Did you count more than that?
It looked like there was a lot more there.
Did I tell
I know
what
there
now?
was probably at least 60, if not up to
Oh, yeah,
100.
60 to 75 people there. We were having a great rally, wonderful speakers up there. The city council wasn't really listening to us. And so everybody was standing around. We were passing out different magazines and stuff. And then something happened at the rally that surprised us all. What happened, Amy? You don't remember it, do you?
No, I don't really recall it, other than I know that we walked around. I went for the first walk, and we stopped outside of City Hall and asked the public officials to come out. And of course, we stood outside with our signs in a peaceful protest, and everyone was videoing and asking them to come out. We actually went in, had an individual on our behalf go in and ask them to come out. They refused, and so then afterwards, we went to go catch some shade on the other side of the courthouse, and I had sat down with Norma Sapp and just started to cool off and go into just small talk of different, events and things. And they tell me that I ended up going into seizure and having a grand mal on the courthouse lawn. And in the process, the way the story is told to me, because of course everyone always asks me with this condition, which let me explain a little further. I haven't actually had this condition my whole life. Just came on in the last 3 years. They don't really know the reasons for it yet, and we're still trying to discover. But the number one question that I always get asked is, what do you feel before this happens? And what people don't realize is that there's not always a feeling. There's not always an aura per se, or a feeling. And in this instance, there was no feeling. I was just having conversation with Norma, and she's a wonderful individual. But in the meanwhile, I had the seizure, and the way everybody tells me is that I started turning blue. I guess I had a bunch of people wrapped around me, of course, and they had
That's scary.
on my
That's scary.
side. I believe, John, you were one of the people that was holding
I
my
can help
head.
you a little bit. I can help you a little bit, Amy, because I was standing there talking to a couple of people, and they said somebody was on the ground. And I turned around, and you were laying on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing we did was go over to you, and several people were trying to help you. You were on your back. They rolled you on your side so that you didn't swallow anything,
Right.
and checked your airway. We called 911, and that's when they said that you were turning blue. So that's when I came over to your head. And you were kind of blue, but I've seen people in grand mal seizures before, so I do, But then you start kind of breathing, so you pink and blue. So we kept that spit out of your mouth and stuff. We didn't want you to aspirate that and get pneumonia. And then that's when really miracle happened, in my opinion, because something was rubbed on your wrists and on the bottom of your feet. And the grand mal seizure you were in, you'd been going on for 15, 20 seconds, quite a long time. And I was amazed you came right out of it after that was rubbed on you.
Right. And that's the story that I get from quite a few of the people that were around. They were woed and awed, is what I want to say. And of course, when I woke up, just to kind of give people a little bit of what someone in this condition that has these issues, when they come out of a grand mal, because there's different types of seizure. And so you kind of have to get familiar with that fact as well. But in this particular event, I did not recognize my surroundings because I'm not from Alva, even though I am, from Enid and have worked this territory in this area in sales for a long time. It still was not home. And a lot of times, even at home, you don't recall where you're at necessarily instantly. You have to kind of go through a recollection of events through your spouse or your loved ones or whoever it is that is around in that moment. And of course, whoever's around is pretty freaked out. It's a very overwhelming experience. And so it's very important to kind of know just some of the basics, like you explained earlier, in terms of rolling people over on their side. If you don't know, you can handle it incorrectly, and things can go wrong. And so it was very, I think, magnificent in my eyes that there were people such as yourself that have dealt with the situation, that would know a little bit of an experience to bring in. I'm not going to name names of people that use the roll-on with me, but I'm very thankful for that. I've been using now for the past couple of days something similar myself, and I haven't been using it for seizure because I don't have a grand mal seizure very often. I've only had a few in the past few years, and luckily and thankfully. But this tincture of roll-on, I'm getting kind of an ease from it when I use it, is my experience. If I had to bring back something outside of this event, I'm getting, just some peace and some ease when I go into like any type of anxiety. And so when someone says, well, past that, what could I use that for? That would be what I would say. But in that moment, I was scared. I was very, very terrified because I didn't know where I was. I didn't know who I was with necessarily until people started talking to me, such as yourself and Norma and different people in the group. And then at that point, when I went to the hospital through the EMT, I was just humiliated and very embarrassed, very vulnerable state to be in. And I was in tears, and I was very embarrassed. And some of the people that went to the hospital with me, a gentleman that also has epilepsy, but I think it's very magnificent as well that him and I met on that day, because he knew how to deal with the situation himself on a different level. But he went up to the hospital with me, and a couple of other people went that were from the area, and they started discussing how the woe and the ah in my moment of humiliation. And in that moment, I said, does anybody have a public video of it?
Mm.
And they said, oh, well, nobody put it on Facebook or anything. I said, I'm not concerned with that. And I said, listen, because they were talking about, gosh, we're so sorry this happened, but if it had to happen, what a better day than any. And maybe it will change the hearts of some of our decision makers. And in that event, I said, you know what? Go and get it. Find any copy of it that you can. And I set my ego and my pride aside. And I said, it's not about me. It's about the people and having the ease of access to their medicine. Because I could have died. And I don't know necessarily that I'm going to place it solely on that, because obviously there's wondrous things that go on that are way above us. But in the end, I will say that I had good support that day. I had someone that was not afraid to help me, which I'm very thankful for, with the roll-on, and has given me further knowledge with what I can do with that so that I can help another patient. But in addition to that, it really shows how that community comes together when they're trying to get the rights, to where they're supposed to be, to what they were voted on, and not the city ordinances that Alva's trying to place on that citizen and the patient over there in taking their ease of access to their medicine away.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Yes.
that's kind of
It did show how people come together, because all these rallies, almost everybody there is a patient. And rather than just freaking out, all these people turned and started helping Amy. It was really fantastic. Everybody came. I loved it.
I feel like
Thank
that's what's
you.
happening across the state with the people that are working on this movement, though. You know what I mean? It's bringing that connection that, that it's giving people here hope. And
Can I say one more thing? Because I know I talked quite a bit, just giving that experience. And they say I never shut up. But anyhow, I just want to say thank you to everyone that was involved.
Oh, thank you,
great.
Amy, for being
Wonderful.
New York. You're a wonderful person. You're great.
Yeah, Amy, I wanted to.
You guys are wonderful as well.
I'm really glad we got to do this. And
Thank you.
Amy DC from Mary Jane Media. I really wanted to say thank you. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did. It takes a lot of courage to be willing to share that story. And if there's one thing that I've learned, yes, we do run the media company, but we also have a dispensary, and that closed mouths don't help anybody. And not being able to see it firsthand, like you gave permission and you allowed, that by putting kind of what you initially felt deep inside, what might have been scared or worried about it getting out there. That's awesome. That's extraordinary. Yeah.
And on that note, I just want to add to that it's a very, very vulnerable, because, anytime I've ever had, let's just say, an absence, seizure or partial, something to that effect, where I'm still cognizant of somewhat of my surroundings and I don't pass out into a grand mal. That's equally humiliating. And anytime, it always overwhelms me to a point of, and everybody goes, why? And they don't understand it. And the way I want to explain it is, it's just a very vulnerable place for a person to be in where anybody could take that piece of information and try to use it against you for whatever reason that benefits them most. And it goes back to our rights, under the ADA and protecting each other. But at the same time, I go, there's a point in education where you have to step outside of yourself a little bit, I think, and say how, this event could have happened on any day, but it didn't. And I go, how can that be used to where it just does more than the ooh and the ah? Because you go, I said in this moment, take it back, show your public officials and hold them accountable for the fact that I could have died on their public property had that thing not been there to be administered to me. And in that moment, what are you going to do the next time this happens?
Yeah, in a moment like that, even if you had medication like that, you couldn't apply it to yourself. So
That's right.
someone needs to help you. That's
That's
one thing
right.
we need to cover too.
And you know, the caregiver, you're right, because that's one of the rights that they're trying to take away over there is, for instance, when a minor has been given the recommendation for their medicinal use, they're trying to say that the caregiver cannot provide that to the patient, their child, for instance. That's not right. That's not right.
How ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they made really good points on that subject, you know, and we see it all the time in the dispensary. It boils down to the people that are there, the people that are making these rules and regulations. It boils down to one thing. They absolutely know nothing about cannabis. And that's just what it boils down to. Maybe that it's not even that in some instances they're trying to be malicious. It's the fact that they do not know, but the non-willingness to put somebody in, you know, a position of power that does know is really the major problem there. They've got to know that, you know, people have been buying throughout the course of the past year, you know, and they're not going home to, you know, have their kids smoke flower. I mean, it's just most people realize that, you know, having your kids smoke flower is going to be wrong. That is going to be a bad thing. That is a banned thing. We understand that. But to say, kind of like Chris Moe and other people have mentioned, you know, when you're a parent and you're trying to make, you know, edibles for your child, you need to know that it wasn't produced in a factory that has a nut allergy or some other type of allergy that may be harmful for that child. We've got to be able to make that medicine at home for the child by the parents. When did it become a big problem for the parent to take care of the child? That's what I want to know.
What do you think, CJ?
Well, you know, it's funny you said that because I was getting ready to say, hey, Laura, why don't you share your thoughts and then I'll share mine. so ladies first.
You know, I just think that we need to remove the negative experience from it and take what we can grow from and just create as much awareness as possible to these situations. And I love that, you know, Amy, you were, you know, that you were willing to share your experience to create that awareness and go through that vulnerability, you know, that I mean, I couldn't imagine being in that position at that time. I can relate and have empathy just because my 20-year-old, she has vasovagal where she'll pass out. And, you know, so I've seen her in those states and I couldn't imagine, you know, not remembering, but still being willing to bury yourself to have to, you know, to share experience. And I think that's one of the, you know, things that gives me the most hope in this industry here.
Yeah. No, Amy, I want to applaud you for sharing your story and, you know, to the specifics that you did, and also just being allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that situation. Even with sharing today, it really does do a little bit of that because you're normally not in that situation. I'm sure you're a very strong-minded, very strong individual person, and then for something like that to happen where so many people came to your need. So hats off to you for sharing that story, and then more importantly, for you continuing your work as an advocate to share, which is, to me, is the largest gap that's out there right now, is just the perception.
Absolutely.
The perception.
Absolutely.
But
and that, if you'll allow me one more space, I did.
No, I can't. Let me continue. No, go ahead.
Sure, no.
Amy, I was kidding you. Go, please.
No. I was just going to say, I think the biggest deal that we face, one of the biggest deals that we face is not just the uneducation or, you know, people not being educated enough, but also the social stigma and the bias that is centered around this medicinal product. It's not just a flower that you go out and smoke. There's so many different methods. Absolutely. So many different alternative methods to utilize this medicine that's been around for centuries. And the only reason it was ever thrown out was for, you know, corporate purposes and public, not a public interest, but a profit. Well, and he's trying to get some other thing out in the way. You know, if you go back to the history, but basically where I'm going with this, we got very well educated people, as well as people that, like myself, I worked my way up to almost a master's degree. I've almost got my master's, and I'm very well educated. But in addition to that, I busted my rear end for the past at least decade in big corporate sales. I am very well educated in different methods. And so when somebody goes, oh, you're this or you're that, and even your big decision makers that could be turning their crops into hemp or so many other benefits outside of just medicine, but including medicine, If we can get them shifted in their views across the stigma, that's what we're going to make waves.
Yep.
And
real quick,
do that through patient experience.
Yep. And real quick, there's three things that, in terms of exactly what you just said, is that how do we break through that stigma? How do we reach the strictest, most ultra conservative, if that's the right word for people who oppose cannabis, maybe whatever it is. So there's three things that I always fall back on. So the first one is that this is a matter of freedom and liberty. And the freedom and liberty things that have established through our Constitution, through our Bill of Rights, it's the foundation of what we were built on. We were built as a nation of rebels, right? Whenever we were being overtaxed and everything, we just didn't idly sit by and accept that. We fought back. So we need to accept that in terms of, you know what, I don't care how you feel about cannabis or the medical properties, but it's more a matter of freedom and liberty. And that will always ring true to everyone consistently. Yeah. And the second piece that I like to talk to is that for the ultra religious people who oppose this view, is that if we're to believe that God created the world that we live in, created all the beauty, everything surrounding us, and he created this natural plant that has been there for decades, that has been used throughout history, why is it wrong now? Why would God create something like this, for us? and then the third piece of it that I think that affects people the most is that when we are dealing with the most serious health conditions, whether it's seizures, whether it's cancer, and for the most part, and I feel comfortable saying this, traditional medicine has failed us. Big pharma does not cure diseases; they create more of these the treatment. So anyway, in going back to that, is that I always like to ask people, what would you do if it was your family member? What would you do if that was your son, your daughter, and
if that was your
mother, everything like that? So those are the three principles I think as advocates that we can really stick to, and as long as we have that message, it resonates across everyone, and most people would be able to reason with that.
Right. Well, and you know what? Where does it start? It starts and it goes back to, you have to have the conversation. Start having the conversations. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. Have the conversation every time you get a chance. That's where the education comes. And even though in this moment of a conversation, that education may not be applicable to them and that person in that moment, it will come back around. They'll remember it down the road when it comes back around with their child, with the person that they know that they love, or whoever it is.
That's one thing that they're learning. That's one thing they're learning, is the image that we got is we're everybody. We're not just long hair, bearded people sitting around hitting a bong all day long. We're everybody you see. You see us in Walmart. You see us in Sonic. You see us everywhere.
Right.
Come on now, John. I know you're there hitting the bong all day long. Just kidding.
It's crazy to think that some of these people can still, go to work and still achieve goals and still have a functioning parental life and things like that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Through their medicine, it will help. It will help through their medicine.
Absolutely.
Yep. Guy, this has been a terrific discussion, and I'm excited that we'll be able to continue and share more stories like this, because I think it really truly impacts everyone. But I do want to take a moment and just thank the sponsors of our show. And Laura, I'm going to have you plug your own work as far as the Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine and what you do. So if you could just take a quick minute and explain what your work is. You're the editor, you're the founder, and I think the work that you're doing is just so important for the community. So why don't you share with that for our listeners, please?
Basically, Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine it was founded with the purpose for elevating through education and healing, for connecting our community, for being a media news resource that helps, supports, and offers to find resources to heal people and connect those holes to create the whole. So I believe in giving patients a voice. I believe in giving, the community support and businesses affordable sponsorship. And my purpose is just to watch people heal.
Yeah, and then obviously I also wanted to share that you recently, I think it was this past week, that you were able to bring together a bunch of medical professionals and talk to about cannabis and how it's helping. So if you want to share, I think those are great things. And then any upcoming events that you may have for Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine.
Right. This was an ongoing. This is an ongoing documentary. John was there.
Yeah, it was great.
It was. We had Dr. Regina Nelson fly in from Boulder, Colorado. We had Dr. Dory Abbott, John Frazier. We had Ashley Rawson from the Oklahoma Medical Cannabis Information Resource Center, basically all coming in talking about different alternative methods for healing so that we can create the awareness for, healing of a 3-year-old who was misdiagnosed, and, mainstream medicine wasn't helping her. So we had to make a way for we were going to help her. So, and we're going to do an ongoing documentary and series for that. So it was really awesome. The next one's the 11th of October. John, you have some upcoming events too, I believe, for the magazine and for.
See, Laura doesn't get as excited about stuff as I do. This was so cool. Dr. Dory, she's going to put these probes on my head and she's going to flip me around 180 degrees. It's going to rock on. Now we've also got somebody doing a hyperbolic chamber. That is so cool. And then Ashley up there, she's working with this. Is such cool. I love bringing all these people together. Now that's the way I feel about it.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
Yep. And then obviously, DC, one more time, why don't you share it? We appreciate you hosting one of the streams. So if you want to share, your dispensary and the work that you do there, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We started out as a dispensary. We were also, kind of looking for something to separate ourselves. We do care about advocacy. We, have recently gotten involved with a lot more projects and things like that. But we are Mary Jane Media and Dispensary. And for us, it's really about, we run 3 shows. One is Terps and Strains, where we educate, and then we have on Terps and Strains, and then we have Educate and Medicate, where we do specific topics, terpenes, cannabinoids, patient education, things like that. Then we have Local Spotlight, where we spotlight local businesses that might be able to not achieve the footprint of somebody with a very, very large pocketbook. So those are the things that are important to us. We've recently, like I said, started covering events. We were, at the OSDH March on OMMA. We had a great time out there. That was
a good one.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a blast. So
the OMMA had the governor had a great chance yesterday to write the OMMA, but instead they took the head that was the OMMA and replaced him with the person that was the head of the health department, somebody who's not been friendly to us so far, and he's not going to be friendly to us in the OMMA. But, what can I say?
Keep pushing.
Yep, absolutely. And then also Laura and Amy, any closing comments that, both of you, like in terms of what sharing this information and going forward, what would be your involvement? Amy, I'm specifically interested to see how you're going to share this message in your community. And then Laura, I'll let you bring us home. We'll close out this podcast. So go for it, Amy.
Oh, I don't know my exact plans. I know that I'm going to, utilize the experience just as I am now and opportunities to educate people further as I'm building relationships throughout the industry. But I'm going to specifically, I think, work with Laura and John on some things, and I'm excited about that. And then outside of that, I'm planning on holding the state accountable for the things that went on yesterday. I'm not going to go into, further detail. I think that everybody had a great experience. But needless to say, outside of that, thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Alva, and the last thought, John, you.
Love you, Amy.
Is it Daryl?
yeah, DC.
Okay, thank you. Because, I've only met you once in person, man. I think maybe twice. Okay. But your shirts kick ass. I want one of those shirts. Woo!
Thank you so much. I can get one for you. Just stop by and we got one for you.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're awesome.
And then, Laura, bring us home. Any upcoming events? What else do you have currently going on with Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine?
There's, tons of events. We have Cooking with Tony Freitas coming up. We have, lots of things going on in Oklahoma City. We have the October 11th event. We have more podcasts. We're basically, John and I are going out to dispensaries in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and, meeting people and patients and sharing patient experience. So we're just ramping it up to we're just getting started. creating awareness. And
Right on.
Absolutely. And do me a favor real quick, if you could plug your website and then any of your social handles, please.
it's cannabisoklahomamagazine.com, or you can go to see me on Facebook at Canna Oklahoma Magazine.
Awesome. Very good. Now, someday, Laura, we won't have to do that. We can start our podcast like Joe Rogan does, that he just starts talking. He doesn't even have to tell people where they are because they know. So for now, you and I, we have to tell people what sites they're on. But it'll change someday. So listen, just want to thank all of you for a great podcast today. Amy, John, right? And Daryl.
Right on. Yeah.
Right. So, and then obviously, Laura, thank you all so much for a fantastic podcast. And let's do this again someday.
Sounds like a winner.
Sounds great to me.
Thank you for having me on, guys.
Bye.
Very good. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.